Picture this. You wake up to headlines announcing that the fate of your homeland is being decided thousands of miles away, in secretive meetings attended by the most influential leaders on the planet. As you sip your morning coffee, you learn that United States President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are sitting down in the historic Blue Room of the White House, discussing your future over dinner. Not just your future, but the future of nearly 2 million people in Gaza. Their plan? A bold, deeply controversial proposal to relocate Palestinians from Gaza, effectively redrawing the map of the Middle East and igniting a storm of outrage, fear, and uncertainty across the globe. Is this the first step toward peace, or the opening act of a humanitarian catastrophe with consequences that will echo for generations? To truly grasp what is at stake, we need to travel back in time, to the defining events that have shaped Palestinian identity and the conflict itself. The issue of Palestinian displacement is not a recent phenomenon. It is a wound that goes back more than 75 years. In the year 1948, during what Palestinians call the Nakba, or catastrophe, more than 750,000 Palestinians were expelled or forced to flee their homes as the State of Israel was founded. Entire villages were erased from the map, families scattered, and a national trauma was born, one that still shapes lives and politics today. But the story did not end there. After the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel occupied the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza, and the Golan Heights. Hundreds of thousands more Palestinians were displaced as borders shifted and new settlements rose. The United Nations General Assembly responded with Resolution 194, which recognized the right of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes. Yet for more than 7 decades, this right has remained largely theoretical. Israel has rejected it, arguing that a mass return would pose an existential threat to the Jewish state. Attempts to resettle Palestinians in neighboring Arab countries, such as Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt, have repeatedly stalled. Host countries, wary of upsetting delicate demographic balances and political stability, have often closed their doors or imposed strict limitations. Palestinian refugees, meanwhile, have steadfastly resisted any solution that would mean giving up their right of return. The result is a tense, unresolved standoff, punctuated by periodic wars and diplomatic initiatives that rarely deliver real change. International law is unambiguous on the issue of forced displacement. The Fourth Geneva Convention, adopted after the horrors of the Second World War, explicitly forbids the individual or mass forcible transfers, as well as deportations of protected persons from occupied territory. Yet, history has shown that legal norms can be bent or broken under the weight of power politics. Today, echoes of the Nakba are being heard once again as the world's attention turns to Gaza, a narrow, densely populated strip of land squeezed between Israel, Egypt, and the Mediterranean Sea. Fast forward to July of the year 2025. In a private White House dinner, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu discuss a vision for Gaza that is as audacious as it is divisive. Trump, never one to shy away from grand gestures, floats the idea of transforming devastated Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. The plan, in theory, would give Palestinians a chance to start anew, perhaps in other countries, where, according to Netanyahu, they could enjoy a better future. But for most Palestinians, and for human rights advocates worldwide, this is not a dream. It is a nightmare. Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, has called this proposal a grave breach of international law, potentially constituting a war crime and a crime against humanity. To understand why this relocation plan is resurfacing now, we must look at the grim realities on the ground. Since the 7th of October, 2023, when Hamas launched a devastating attack on Israel, Gaza has been plunged into a living hell. The Israeli response has been swift and overwhelming. Internal sources estimate that more than 60,000 Palestinians have perished since the start of this latest conflict. The United Nations warns that over 1 million Gazans, half of the Strip's population, are now at risk of acute food insecurity. The threat of famine looms large, with aid convoys struggling to break through border blockades and relentless airstrikes reducing entire neighborhoods to rubble. The International Criminal Court, alarmed by mounting reports of war crimes, has broadened its investigation, putting the spotlight on the forced displacement of civilians. Meanwhile, the political chessboard is shifting. Egypt, long the gatekeeper of Gaza's southern border, has reinforced its security apparatus, erecting new barriers, digging trenches, and deploying thousands of additional troops. The message is clear. Egypt will not accept a new wave of Palestinian refugees, fearing the political, economic, and security consequences. Jordan and Lebanon, both home to substantial Palestinian populations and facing their own internal challenges, have also closed ranks. The Arab League has issued a forceful condemnation of the relocation plan, branding it a violation of international law and a direct threat to regional stability. They have vowed to resist any attempt at forced displacement, warning that such a move could inflame tensions across the entire Middle East. Inside Gaza, the mood is one of grim defiance. The Palestinian Authority, headquartered in Ramallah, has categorically rejected any negotiations that even entertain the possibility of relocation. Our people's right to self-determination is non-negotiable, declares a senior official. Internal polling data paints a striking picture. More than 80% of Palestinians in Gaza say they would rather endure unimaginable hardship than leave their ancestral land. This is not just a matter of geography. It is about identity, dignity, and the right to chart one's own destiny. As Michael Link, former United Nations Special Rapporteur, puts it, international law is clear. Palestinians have the right to remain in their homes, and any attempt to forcibly transfer them is illegal. The international community is divided, but the chorus of condemnation is growing. Human rights groups, including Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, have called the relocation plan a form of ethnic cleansing. Demonstrations have erupted in cities from Tel Aviv to Washington, London, Paris, and beyond. Outside the White House, hundreds of protesters gather, many draped in the Palestinian keffiyeh, waving flags and banners that read, "Stop arming Israel," and "Say number to genocide." The energy is palpable. Some call for Netanyahu's arrest, pointing to the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant over alleged war crimes. Others demand an immediate ceasefire and the release of hostages still held in Gaza. The streets of Tel Aviv, too, are filled with demonstrators, some demanding the return of Israeli hostages, others decrying the government's handling of the war and its impact on civilians. So what happens if this controversial relocation plan actually moves forward? Imagine for a moment a scenario where neighboring countries, under international pressure or financial incentives, agree to accept tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands, of Palestinians fleeing Gaza. Egypt, despite its public statements, could face mounting pressure from the United States and European Union to open humanitarian corridors. Jordan and Lebanon, already struggling with refugee populations and frail economies, might be offered aid packages in exchange for cooperation. But the risks are enormous. A sudden influx of refugees would strain already overstretched health systems, schools, and infrastructure. Social tensions could rise, fueling resentment and xenophobia. Humanitarian organizations warn that the resulting refugee crisis could dwarf the displacement seen during the Nakba, especially now that social media can broadcast every tragedy to a global audience in real time, intensifying outrage and mobilizing activism. There is also the specter of radicalization. History teaches us that mass displacement rarely brings stability. In the wake of the Nakba, Palestinian diaspora communities became a crucible for political movements, some peaceful, others militant. Today, a new generation of Palestinians dispossessed, traumatized, and disillusioned could turn to extremism, believing that the international system has failed them yet again. The seeds of future conflict would be sown, not just in the Middle East, but in diaspora communities from Europe to the Americas. If, on the other hand, the plan collapses, as many experts predict, the suffering in Gaza is unlikely to abate. Already, more than 1 million Gazans are on the edge of starvation, with aid deliveries hampered by blockades, bureaucratic delays, and security concerns. Political paralysis may persist, with Hamas and the Palestinian Authority locked in a bitter feud, and international actors unable or unwilling to broker a durable ceasefire. The danger is that the world, overwhelmed by crisis fatigue and a relentless news cycle, may simply look away. Palestinians could find themselves trapped between blockade and uncertainty, their suffering rendered invisible by the sheer volume of global crises. But there is a third scenario, however remote, that international outrage and diplomatic pressure catalyze a radically different outcome. In this vision, the International Court of Justice, now being asked to rule on the legality of forced displacement, could issue a landmark advisory opinion that reaffirms core principles of international law. The International Criminal Court, expanding its war crimes investigation, might hold perpetrators accountable and deter future abuses. Renewed peace talks, perhaps brokered in Doha, Qatar, where indirect negotiations are already underway, could address the root causes of the conflict, balancing security concerns with the rights and dignity of Palestinians. Such a settlement would require extraordinary political courage and compromise from all sides, as well as sustained international support. It is a steep, rocky path, but not an impossible one. For the global economy, the stakes are enormous. Every ripple in this crisis reverberates across continents. Instability in the Middle East can send oil prices soaring, rattling energy markets from London to Shanghai, and triggering inflationary pressures that hit ordinary families around the world. Disrupted supply chains can delay shipments of goods, increase transportation costs, and undermine consumer confidence. Humanitarian catastrophe, meanwhile, places enormous strain on neighboring economies, particularly those like Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon, which are already grappling with high unemployment and fragile social safety nets. The United States, European Union, Gulf states, and even Asian powers like China are being asked to foot the bill for ever larger relief packages. Washington, for example, recently pledged an additional $100 million in humanitarian aid to Gaza, earmarked for food, water, and medical supplies. Yet distribution remains a challenge, with many shipments stranded at border crossings or diverted by armed groups. The political consequences are just as profound. The relocation plan, if enacted, would set a dangerous precedent, one that could be used to justify similar actions in other conflict zones. Already, some world leaders are watching closely, wondering what this might mean for contested territories from Western Sahara to Kashmir. The international legal system, slow and often hampered by geopolitics, is being tested as never before. If the rights of Palestinians can be overridden by force or fiat, what protections remain for other vulnerable populations? For you, the viewer, this is not just a distant story. The policies being made behind closed doors in Washington, Jerusalem, and other capitals have immediate, real-world impacts. They influence the price you pay at the pump, the stability of global markets, and the security of entire regions. They shape the headlines you see and the humanitarian appeals that fill your newsfeed. As citizens, it is crucial to stay informed, to question official narratives, and to demand accountability from decision-makers. The international legal system, though imperfect, remains a critical bulwark against abuses of power. By amplifying marginalized voices, supporting humanitarian action, and insisting that leaders uphold their obligations under international law, ordinary people can make a difference. Let us dive deeper into the historical parallels. Forced population transfers have been attempted numerous times in the 20th century, from the expulsion of ethnic Germans after the Second World War to the Balkan Wars of the 1990s. Each time, the result has been profound human suffering, lingering trauma, and unresolved grievances. In the Balkans, for instance, the international community spent decades and billions of dollars trying to repair the damage wrought by ethnic cleansing. The lesson is clear. Displacement does not solve political problems. It compounds them. Expert voices are nearly unanimous in their concerns. Kenneth Roth, former head of Human Rights Watch, warns that forced displacement is a tool of ethnic cleansing, and any attempt to relocate Palestinians against their will must be unequivocally condemned. Martin Indyk, who spent years as a United States Special Envoy for Israeli-Palestinian negotiations, sees the plan as not only impractical but also morally reprehensible, undermining any prospect for a lasting peace. Hanan Ashrawi, a respected Palestinian politician and scholar, argues that the relocation proposal is a continuation of the Nakba, aiming to erase Palestinian identity and deny our right to our homeland. Gideon Levy, an Israeli journalist known for his candid analysis, calls it a dangerous illusion, ignoring the deep-rooted connection of Palestinians to their land and perpetuating a cycle of violence and displacement. On the ground, the human stories are heartbreaking. Take the case of the Al-Samouni family in Gaza, who have lived in the same neighborhood for generations. Despite losing their home to an airstrike and struggling to find enough food and clean water, they refuse to leave. "This is our land. Our ancestors are buried here," says the family matriarch. "No matter what happens, we will not abandon our home." This sentiment is echoed in thousands of households across Gaza. Internal polling consistently shows that more than 4 out of every 5 Gazans oppose any form of relocation, even if it means enduring continued hardship and uncertainty. The diplomatic maneuvering continues. Netanyahu's visit to Washington is just one piece of a larger puzzle. Parallel negotiations are taking place in Doha, where Israeli and Palestinian representatives are seeking a possible ceasefire and a deal for the release of hostages. The United States, keen to maintain its influence in the region and to contain Iranian ambitions, is also exploring talks with Tehran. Trump's administration, while publicly supporting Israel, has floated the idea of lifting sanctions on Iran at the right time, signaling a willingness to use both carrots and sticks in pursuit of its goals. Meanwhile, the United Nations General Assembly has passed a new resolution demanding an immediate halt to all settlement activity in the West Bank. Several human rights organizations have jointly petitioned the International Court of Justice, seeking an advisory opinion on the legality of forced displacement. The world's legal, political, and humanitarian institutions are being mobilized, but the outcome remains uncertain. If we project forward, the possible futures branch in three directions. In the first, the relocation plan is implemented, triggering a massive humanitarian crisis and destabilizing the region for years to come. In the second, the plan collapses amid fierce resistance, leaving Gaza mired in conflict and deprivation. In the third, a negotiated settlement emerges, addressing the root causes of the conflict and offering a glimmer of hope for a just, sustainable peace. Each path carries immense risks and challenges. Which one will the world choose? So what does all this mean for you, for us, for everyone watching? The lesson is as urgent as it is sobering. The decisions made in distant capitals reverberate across the globe, shaping lives in ways both visible and invisible. We cannot afford to turn away. Stay informed, question what you hear, and take action, whether by supporting humanitarian organizations, raising your voice on social media, or holding elected officials to account. As Martin Indyk wisely stated, lasting peace only emerges when both sides feel seen, heard, and secure. Forced displacement, history has shown, rarely brings stability. Only new layers of trauma and resentment. The fierce resistance of Palestinians to leaving their homeland is rooted in more than just attachment to land. It is about preserving identity, honoring ancestors, and defending the right to decide their own future. Here is a revealing fact. Few outside Gaza know that, according to recent surveys, more than 80% of Gazans refuse any relocation, even as famine looms and bombs fall. This underscores the limitations of any top-down solution imposed by outside powers. Real peace demands empathy, dialogue, and respect for the rights and aspirations of all peoples. Will the Trump-Netanyahu plan bring peace, or will it fuel deeper chaos and instability? Based on everything we have seen and what history teaches, the answer leans toward greater disorder, at least in the short term. True peace will require bold compromise, creative diplomacy, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Rights cannot be erased by power, and justice cannot be postponed forever. So what do you think? Is there a way forward that honors both justice and security, dignity and peace? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive valuable, share it with your friends and family. And don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth